All right. Good evening, Hampstead. Today is September 28th, 2021, and the school board meeting starting at 7:01 p.m. Go ahead and do the roll call if you wouldn't mind, Melissa, please.
Sure. Jason Giard. Caitlin Parnell. Megan Malcolm. David Smith. Erin Pellegrini. Also seated at the board table is Robert Thompson. Business Administrator Jeff Dowd.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Melissa. Go ahead and stand for the pledge. Megan, you want to lead us? Megan, you want to lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Let's see, board members, you will see that you have two packets for minutes. One is for September 14th, 2021 regular meeting, and the other is for the September 14th, 2021 non-public meeting. Please take a read over, and I'll be looking for a motion to accept.
Make the motion to approve both sets of minutes from September 14th, both public and non-public.
Caitlin, would you mind just make sure that speak in the mic? Sorry. Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve both sets of meeting minutes from September 14th, 2021, public and non-public minutes.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All approved? All right. Thank you very much. The next part is for public comments. Melissa, I believe nobody's here for public comments.
There are none tonight.
All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to go into current business. So under current business, first up, Dr. Cheney and Ms. Nola to present the board building goals presentation.
Thank you for having us tonight. We're going to speak to our Hempstead Middle School and Central School goals. So I'll start with Central School. The first goal that the Hempstead Central School is committed to this year is to incorporating the Universal Design for Learning principles and guidelines into lesson planning and routines for students. Universal Design for Learning is an approach to teaching and learning that gives all children an opportunity to succeed. This graphic on my slide here really talks about the difference between equality, where every child gets the same thing in their teaching and learning. Equity, some children get a couple more boxes so they can see over the fence. And then there's accessibility, where we have a different kind of a fence where the students can see through so that they all have the same opportunities for learning. With this, grade level teams will provide evidence of incorporating their guidelines through their lesson designs, through their PLC minutes, and through self-reflections. The action steps that we're going to take is that Hempstead Central School this year is going to participate as a learning hub school. This is an exciting designation. Our team has worked really hard on this. There are only 8 in the state of New Hampshire right now. They're going to continue their professional development in regard to Universal Design for Learning through expanding our UDL team. We now have representation from every team in our building on here, so we can continue to move this work and learning forward. We're going to further incorporate principals into our staff meetings to give professional development to our teams. We're going to incorporate it through our PLC work, our professional learning community work, where teachers meet to talk about student learning, as well as our response to intervention work. When students aren't responding to the teaching, how can we support them? We're going to use UDL to move student learning forward. We'll also continue to develop lessons that offer options for engagement, representation, and action and expression. And that's a fancy way of saying we're going to be working with students to optimize their choice and autonomy. If children believe in what they're learning and they have some interest in that, they will be learning more. They're excited to learn. They're happy to learn. We'll also be providing options and opportunities for collaboration. Kids like to learn with each other. They don't want to be learning in silos. Learning is a collaborative process, and they're excited to do that. We'll be able to offer alternatives in how information is delivered. Some children learn better by reading out of a textbook. Other children learn better by hearing and talking with their teacher. Some do better listening to a podcast. So we'll offer some different visual and auditory options for learning. And we'll also give children opportunities to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways. Some people are really good at writing essays. Other people are really good at demonstrating through a visual means. The second goal that Hampstead Central School is going to work on this year is a goal around social emotional learning. As we're returning from the pandemic, it is more obvious than ever that we need some attention and time spent on social emotional learning. So we will continue to create a social emotional learning plan that promotes positive social emotional learning for all of our students. Additionally, we're going to develop a system of support to include foundational teaching for all, as well as interventions for students who need a little bit more. One thing that we know is that in order to be successful, students need to learn a set of social and emotional competencies, such as cooperation, responsibility, empathy, self-control, and a set of academic competencies as well, such as perseverance and learning strategies to do their very best. We're continuing to develop our Tier 1, which is our second step curriculum. That's being delivered by our school counselor this year. We also provided professional development to our entire staff, so that way they can continue to support what's being taught at the Tier 1 and use that same language so students can continue to grow. Further action steps include expanding our social emotional learning team at Central School to include representation from all grade levels, as well as our unified arts team and our special education team. It's important that all of these folks are represented to support kids. Kids need that support throughout their day and throughout their building. We're going to develop our matrix to increase clarity so students know, what does it look like to be responsible when I'm in the hallway? That means I'm not putting my hands on the artwork that's in the hallway. What does it mean to be safe when I'm on the playground? It means I'm going down the slide feet first. And we're going to further develop interventions for students. Just like in academics, some students might need a little extra reading, a little extra math to be able to meet the goal, or they might need it delivered in a different way. The same thing applies to social emotional learning. What else do some students need in order to reach their full potential as learners in our school community? Those are the two goals for the Central School for this year. Do you have any questions for me?
Board members?
Can you talk a little bit more about what a learning hub school is?
Yes.
Because it sounds great that we're one of only 8. I just don't know what it is.
Yes. So Universal Design for Learning is a partnership with an organization called CAST, and we've participated in professional development with them for the last 3 years. Last year, for schools that had been with them for this time, they offered an opportunity to become a learning hub school. There was an application process for us to fill out. Our facilitator in our building did a great job with that. And what a learning hub school means is that we've reached an understanding, and we do things like instructional rounds where we look and examine each other's practices to give feedback. Are we incorporating these guidelines the way that we want to at the levels that we want to? Additionally, when there's when it's safe to do so, we're going to be a site where other schools can come and visit to see how we're incorporating these principles into the work that we're doing all the time. Additionally, we have the opportunity, I have 2 teachers that attend a coaching academy, and they're building their capacity to support the rest of our staff in incorporating these ideas and guidelines and how to help every student succeed in their lessons. And then 2 of us also attend a leadership academy where we meet with other leaders around the state to share the work that we're doing and to get feedback and to work together to continue to grow the capacity in our building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Couple questions. One, will this presentation be available online to parents and/or sent out through communications so they can?
Yes, we can make that happen.
Okay. Just a question about, over the last 18 months, we know there's been a learning gap, and the learning gap's not only in education as far as in the school, in the books, et cetera, but SEL especially. Is there anything we're doing looking at with the ESSER funding to help even more, or is, just a little bit more information on that?
That's a great question. I can answer a little bit about what we're doing at the central school as far as that.
Yeah, I'll be asking Ms. Donola the same question, so just...
Okay, so get ready. As far as looking at SEL, one of the great things that we did with the ESSER money was that Summer Learning Academy.
Right.
As much as we did address some of those academic pieces, the real bang for our buck was with the kids connecting with each other and coming back to school and connecting. Nicole's been working really hard on these after-school opportunities as well, and I think that that will be another place where we can support their social emotional development and learning outside of our school day. As far as inside of our school day, that's certainly something that we can look at, as that's one of our goals this year. We can see how we might incorporate some of those ideas during the day.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure that, there's some challenges right now with some students that they haven't really interacted for 18 months in this kind of scale. So anything we can do to help, it'd be good to know. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. So, Home of the Hawks, we have 2 goals to work on for this year. Number 1, instructional strategies, and number 2, social emotional learning. As we've talked about our children returning to school full time, it has been a change, and we are going to respond to their needs, and one way of doing that is through our school goals. So our number 1 goal is to identify and consistently implement effective research-based instructional strategies in lesson planning practices and assessment to support student learning and achievement. And one of the questions that you had asked with regards to how do we know where those gaps are, we just started iReady testing yesterday. Not only do we speak to the teachers regularly and daily PLC meetings that they have together as a grade level, but we started iReady testing to see and progress monitor our students' progress, see where their gaps are, and then we fill in as we go along in our Tier 1, which is the regular classroom, Tier 2 in some extended supports, and then Tier 3 in like the math center, the reading center, and special education services. So that is really important information. iReady, it's a not like a huge standardized test that people hear about. It's a very short, small, and it's diagnostic and gives us where are the kids right now in September. And then we do it again in January to see how much progress that child is making. And we're looking truly at the unique needs of each child. We're not saying that every 3rd grader or every 5th grader is going to be reading at the 3rd grade first month of the year 2022. So we're looking at the individual child's progress throughout the year. So our instructional strategies. We're going to continue to implement our universal design for learning principles. That we are in year 5 as a cohort, and we have been part of the grant system for the state of New Hampshire. In UDL practices, we had a conference yesterday at the Grapponi Center, one of the few schools to be there and participate in these these conversations. I know the Central School is going next week, so we are continuing this work, and the UDL guidelines are really, and I know Dr. Cheney mentioned it, it's providing multiple means of engagement. That's the why of learning. Why do I have to learn this? It's start with why. Have the kids understand why this is important for them now, their careers, and their whole lives. The other guideline is to provide multiple means of representation. So students can represent what they have learned, not just like when we were in school, you had a test, you put down your answer, you got your grade. We want to give them multiple means to represent what they know. Sometimes it is in a formal assessment like that. Sometimes it's a project. Sometimes it's graphic art. They have to understand the content, but we have to open our minds in accepting multiple ways of representing their knowledge. And the third guideline is provide multiple means of action and expression, the how to create curious learners. How could I get to this answer in a different way? And promote their independence as learners. The information is all there. It's right there at the top, in your phone, in your computers every second of the day. But getting them to take some ownership, be curious. Could I have gotten to the answer in a different way? That's how we're getting to those complex learning strategies. It gets those brain synapses clicking and clicking. So they have to be in that environment where they feel safe and comfortable and be able to take some risks. So that's the environment that we're developing. And again, I encourage you all to come through the school and just see what modern learning looks like. It's active. It's very active. Then I would say overall the goal in our instructional strategies is to lead all students to be expert learners. And it's got to be purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, goal-oriented, all of those things, but to the best ability of each child. I was never going to be an engineer, but my teachers saw talents in me and really encouraged me to go into different realms of humanities. And that's what we're trying to really drill down. We talk about personalization and the social emotional learning piece, really getting to know our students, not to be compliant, but to be exploring and curious, and for us to be the resources for them and to harness all that energy. And there's a lot of energy the past couple of weeks, I'll tell you, which we'll talk about in SEL. So we're going to continue our work in our professional learning communities and professional development for our teachers. So our second goal, social emotional learning, to provide a foundation for safe and positive learning that enhances students' ability to succeed in school, careers, and life. These are life skills, our three cornerstones, and many of you who are parents know of our 3 R's: respect, responsibility, and relationships. We come back to that constantly of how is this respectful of each other? How is this respectful of our building? How is that respectful of our school community? We use those 3 R's and build on the positive pieces that we see, and we do a raffle for respect every Friday. And we also honor our students by the Hawk Awards. We've been doing for a few years now. That has been extremely powerful. Kids are very excited. They see their parents show up as a surprise, and they didn't know they were getting a Hawk Award in front of the whole school. So we will continue with that. Moving on, each morning we start our day, just like when kids were little, they'd have the rug time, is it carpet time? Okay. And they'd sit around and they'd just share their day. What did you have for dinner last night? Did you go to a game? At middle school, it's not something you go away from, but you go even deeper. This is this is a complex time for a middle school student. And what they've been through the past 18 months, this is an opportunity in the morning to check in with an adult for less than 10 children and their adult that they have all year long to create a relationship with, to check in and, hey buddy, how are you doing? You feel okay today? You look tired. Checking in with them, seeing them, let them know, I see you, and the reason why it's important, I'm giving time and energy to that. And that's the first thing we do in the morning. And on Wednesdays, we have an advisory time that is almost a full class period, where the whole school shuts down during that time, and you're with your advisor again. And we have different topics that we are covering, such as tolerance. What are some of the other ones I wanted to just share with you? It seems like basic pieces of the social emotional piece, but these are, when we're talking about the whole child, we are addressing things like coping with tough emotions, frustration, dealing with anxiety, choosing calm, showing empathy. That is rich for our students as for ourselves. So in that setting, the adults are able to speak with the students about their experiences. Empathy. How are you going to deal with a situation in intolerance? How are you going to have a conversation with someone that has a differing opinion over something that you're studying, or in an engagement like that? That's still kind and respectful. So those are the pieces that we do in the advisory program. Way more, but we try to also come together as a school to celebrate, like our kite flying project that we did at the end of the year last year. And so truly, we are identifying the post-pandemic social and emotional needs of students to thrive in a traditional academic setting. Our students are coming from different remote learning options, full in, some out, and now they're in the traditional academic setting, which is really, it's challenging for some. They have not been working in cooperative groups for quite some time. Space, distance from other people, having, like we talked about the flat tiring. Well, we had 2 flat tires today. And why is that, is that the worst thing? No, but it annoys someone. There's a cause and effect. They go like this, and then something happens. So we're not trying to make it so strident in the school. We want them to own their school, but there's a reason why we have an orderly dismissal for safety, buses, parent pickup. So we are really having to work on basics right now, just the basics of going down to the calf with, not jumping over the tables and going around. It's just like, there's huge energy. Love them, but we're working on those basics. And checking in with the students and mood identifiers. First thing in the morning, I can tell by the eyes. It's just one of my things. Just like, he doesn't seem right to me today. And I say it to another adult, please check in with them later. And something's off. And that's those mood identifiers. Some of the teachers do it electronically, like on the Chromebooks, and just let me know how you're doing, and they'll do a thumbs up. It's all done so the teacher knows where they are. So we totally are focused on the whole child. And we are continuing to expand our advisory program. Tomorrow, our advisory committee, the adults, am I on the right one? They are going to Danville, New Hampshire, to the Adventure Lore campus, and they are working with the counselors on best activities and events to do during the school day in the advisory program, and we'll be working with them. They're going to be coming to the campus working with our kids on a monthly basis, and we're going to continue to use those community resources of Adventure Lore and the Brown Center at UNH. And our advisory committee is working on a schedule of the specific topics that are sequentially placed to support the needs of our school. If we see something that is of concern, we'll shift and go into this topic of empathy, respect for the building, respect for processes. As things show themselves, we're not going to be so strident to stay to script. What the kids need is what the kids will get. So I think
Questions?
I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. It's a lot.
Yep, I do have a question. It's kind of based on when I was lucky enough to come here to school that day, and you walked around, and we stopped in the math classroom, and you had mentioned about, and it goes back to the first goal with, fostering the school, in school, their careers, their life.
Yes.
Can you speak about what we're doing to enhance careers for, students at this point that may not be college-driven, but there's plenty of other great career paths. But what are you doing now in the middle school to help that?
And that's the why. Why are we learning to do this? So the kids, well, we deserved it as well back years ago when we were in school. Why do I have to learn this? What's the real-life application of this skill? Well, it can be used in plumbing, HVAC. If you see with Mr. Remillard and his robotics club that he's starting off with, Ms. Deniski, a newcomer to this after-school enrichment program, talking about he's using the math when he's doing architectural drawings, and he's tying in, so if he's got a 6th grade class for his UA class, he's talking to the 6th grade math teacher, say, what are you working on? And he incorporates it into that and saying, okay, this is what an architect needs. This is what a town planner needs this for. So we are really opening up more of a dialogue about the career path. We need careers. We need to know, kids need to know what their options are in order to put their passions into place. So it's shifted a lot in the past few years. If you look 10 years ago when I was an administrator, it was, what's that 4-year college you're going to go to? What's that Ivy League that, that's your worth? Not anymore. We are opening up those dialogues for the career-ready student.
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Or all right. Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Thank you, Dr. Cheney. All right. We're going to turn to Superintendent Thompson to discuss the strategic plan update.
All right, good evening. I want to thank both Mrs. Denola and Dr. Cheney for taking the time to put together that presentation. There's a lot of really exciting work that's going on at both of our schools. So the Strategic Planning Steering Committee, we had our first meeting on Monday. Again, we've contracted with a consultant, Dr. Joseph Miller from Think Strategy. So he's working with a representative team. So we met on Monday, and I just wanted to give kudos to the members of that team. And they include Carl Hubner, who serves as the Hampstead community member, Lauren Silla, who is the PTSA president and parent, Maria Denola, who's the principal at the middle school, Chad Pimentel, who serves as the middle school representative, teacher representative, Sarah Wisecarver, who serves as the Hampstead Central School representative, Tracy Griffin-Hagen, our Student Services Director, Lisa Lambert, who serves as the Paraeducator Representative, and Erin Pellegrini, who is the Hampstead School Board Representative. So the meeting we held on Monday it's very exciting work. We started with examining the strategic plan from 2015 to 2020, and going through that document and looking at some of its merits, specifically looking at the values. Are the values that were identified in 2015 still relevant today? So that was part of the conversation that we had on Monday. And, this aligns very nicely with some of the work I've done around the superintendent entry plan, which I'll present at the next board meeting, where I've asked community members, I've asked parents, and I've asked staff, what are our values? What do we value most about the Hampstead schools? So as we really dig deep into the writing of this new strategic plan, you'll see a lot of those voices that we heard this summer will be incorporated into that work. And again, the timeline, we're going to meet monthly between now, with the hope that by the end of January we could bring at least a draft, if not a final version, to this group. And with that said, I'll open it up to any questions that folks might have about the Strategic Planning Steering Committee.
Any questions, board members? Nope. Thank you.
Great.
All right. And actually, now we'll talk about the Hampstead Central School Building Edition.
Right. Excellent. So last week, Mr. Dowd and myself had the opportunity to attend the Best Practices Conference on School Operations and Finance in Concord. This is an annual conference that's attended by superintendents and business administrators. We had the opportunity to meet with Amy Clark. She's essentially the head of facilities for the Department of Education. And we were talking specifically about building aid. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation. There's been a long-standing moratorium on building aid. And now what we're seeing is there are new funds that are becoming available for building aid as we move forward. In the last couple of years, the new aid has been used to fund projects that had been previously completed by districts. Now there's a new allocation of funds for new projects moving forward. For example, in 2022, there's a total of $30 million. Those funds have already been committed. So what we're looking at is the possibility of funds, and I want to highlight that word possibility, the possibility of funds being available for FY23. And so what we are in the process of doing, and we've met with Jeff Mackey, the head of facilities, we have to submit a letter of intent on January 1st to the Department of Education, notifying them that it is our intention to engage in a building project in the future. And the next step in that, and that is a fairly simple process. The next step in that process would be to complete a full application, and that would be done no later than July 1. That's a little bit more extensive of a project. We'd have to submit plans, a very detailed plan of the scope of the work that would be completed. And again, I use the word possibly because the pool of money would be somewhere between $30 and $50 million. We don't have a sense of when, of whether or not Hampstead would receive priority for those funds. Quite honestly, with the long-standing moratorium, there's a lot of deferred building projects across the state of New Hampshire. I would like to think, given the significant need of the Hampstead Central School, that would be given priority. The problem is that even if we are awarded funds, we would not know what that allocation is until the spring of 2023. So I put that out there as there could be building aid. You know, there is a need to move forward with the project, in my opinion, and I'm going to share a few thoughts on that. But we should enter with the understanding that while there may be building aid, there absolutely is not a certainty. In fact, I would probably lean towards, we may not get it. But with that said, real quickly, I want to highlight something that you're going to hear me highlight a lot. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, and that's for good reason. It's really important. I am in the process. On October 1, I will have completed the first 90 days of my superintendency. I'll be in the process of writing a report that I will present to this board. And one of the dire needs that this district has is an addition at the Hampstead Central School. You'll hear me say this again and again. And I can tell you, I was really hoping that I'd be able to come in as the newcomer with the objective lens, walk in that building with some fresh ideas, how we can reallocate programming, how we might be able to look at spaces differently, and come back here with some new ideas and be the hero. That's not going to happen because there's some significant space needs at Hampstead Central School. And I want to just very quickly identify 4 areas that are having instructional impact on our students. And what that means is this is not just we're overcrowded. These are areas in which the instructional program suffers because of the space needs that we have at the Central School. And the first one is the inability to implement universal kindergarten. The vast majority of districts in New Hampshire have universal kindergarten. It is an entitlement. They receive state funding for it, and every child that lives in their community is able to go to kindergarten for free. We can't do that. We simply don't have the space. And given some of the conversations that I've been having with the preschools, they're seeing larger preschool numbers. What that means for us is we can't expand kindergarten. What we're actually talking about is turning kids away. And we know how valuable early intervention is to a child's overall educational experience. So that's one. The second one is the inability to further develop special education programming. The building was built before the IDEA came along in the 1970s. And I can tell you that we have special education programming that is occurring in inadequate spaces. Some of these spaces are very small. I believe that some of these spaces probably pre-1970 were used as storage areas or other things like that. We can't expand our special ed program in a meaningful way that would allow for us to continue to educate certain populations of students in the district, in their home community. And as a result, we oftentimes have to send these students out of district. For me, this isn't even about cost savings. This is about that moral imperative that if a child lives in this community, we should do the absolute best job we can to educate them here in this community. The condition of the central school does not allow for us to do that. 3, the library. The library space that we have at the central school, it's not a library space. It's a retrofitted classroom. Their instruction, meaningful instruction, cannot occur in this space. I was in there the other day and there was a class in there. It was extremely crowded. In my opinion, we weren't able to maintain 3 feet of distancing. And it didn't allow for a lot of the robust programming that a 21st Century Library Media Center could offer. We have phenomenal staff in the Library Media Center, but without adequate space, we're very limited in the program we can offer. And we know that there's a strong connection between instructional outcomes and a really robust Library Media Center. And then the 4th area in terms of impact on instruction is what I call the push-in model. When schools get overcrowded, they'll take their unified arts out of classrooms and they'll push them into the regular education classroom. This currently happens with the technology program. It significantly impacts the quality of the program. The teacher of the tech program has to show up with a cart. They navigate through a busy hallway. They go into the classroom. They hand out their laptops. They get them fired up. It reduces classroom instruction, in some cases, up to 10 minutes. That's technology this year. At the rate that we're going to have to put additional unified arts on carts next year. It could be art. It could be another UA. And imagine the impact that putting art on a cart has. When you have an art teacher, and I've spent quite a bit of time in his classroom, who does some really dynamic lessons, whether it's the pottery lesson, that you're not going to be able to replicate them in a regular classroom environment. So this is just the plea that, one of the first observations I've made, and you're going to continue to hear me talk about this. There is instructional impact to our students when operating in the facility that we're operating in. We need additional classroom space. And with that, I'll take any questions. And again, at the next meeting, I'll present my superintendent's report. This will be a piece of it. So you might hear some of these same things again, but I can dive in a little deeper as well.
School board members? All right. No questions. I mean, I think it's, great, the fresh set of eyes looking at it. I mean, I think everybody in the community, everybody here knows how most of us feel about this, so we appreciate, giving it a look and just seeing what we're going to need and reminding us what's going to happen in the future. So, thank you. So next one, we're going to talk, Mr. Dowd, with the 60s Wing Improvement Project.
Thank you. Assume that's on. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yep.
So just to tidy up on the building project side, we do have a letter of intent that is going in at the end of the year, which seems like a long time away. It's not. So it would be helpful to have some idea as to what the scope of that project is going to be, what we're looking at. We'd need it to put on a warrant anyway. And so it would be helpful to have guidance from the board as to what that project is that we'll be moving forward on. So I will put it out there for you. If it is the same or similar project, then we need to go and simply have that project looked at in light of the work that we're doing right now. Any adjustments that need to be made, but we would probably just be rolling forward pricing. So if that's where the board is headed, that would be very helpful for administration to know. So, all that said,
If I can just, about that, I think that's a good point. We should, bring that up for, I would suggest at the next board meeting, we do talk about the addition, about what we would like. What I'd also like to suggest is between now and then, when I meet with Mr. Thompson, to just discuss what kind of options, if they're thinking of anything different than past plans, to have that outlined to the board as well. Because I think we're, based on what you're talking with Mr. Mackey, Mr. Dowd, if there's any alterations to the plan, or is the plan still sound based on what you're seeing, which I think is important for that fresh set of eyes. What does the board think about that? It's good?
Yep, I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
so on to the renovation project. The work proceeds. Our students are all in their classrooms. There haven't been any issues reported. Our insulation is complete outside. Masonry work is underway. Our building has been bricked up. Not fully, probably about half, I would say, at this point. The garage door on the old drop-off side has been infilled, so work progresses very well there. It's moving along. It looks really good. The building looks, and it's a solid building, somehow looks more solid with that brick on. So as we wrap that up, it's really going to look sharp. Everything else is in line. This was a quiet period for the interior work. As you know, we have the HVAC systems going in and some windows to be put in after that. So, any questions on it?
Question on 60. I'll just say I was there this weekend with my children and at the playground, and it looked great from what we saw. It looks really good. So appreciative of that. And I know this is the first meeting we've had since the unfortunate event that had happened with the contractor who was there. But I do want to say a special thank you to the administration, to Dr. Cheney, and to Ms. Thompson and others for putting action in place really quickly in remedying that. So while unfortunate, it did show the leadership that at the school. So I know on behalf of school board, but also parent, I appreciate that, and getting it back in process as fast as possible, but with safety in mind. So thank you.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'd just add, in reference to, Mr. Smith's comment, on Friday, September 17th, we were notified that one of the subcontractors working on the building project at the Central School had a criminal sex offender background, not involving a child. We took swift action. We shut down the project until such time we received guarantees from the contractor that all of the backgrounds for any subcontractors had been completed. The project resumed the following day when we received those assurances. And I just, one of the questions that comes up is why did the school not do the criminal background checks of the subcontractors? And RSA 189:13 outlines that it is the responsibility of the superintendent's office to do background checks on direct service providers, individuals that work with children. And even our own policy, GBCD, outlines the same. If you're working with a child, there's a statutory obligation that the background check is done by the superintendent's office. I have brought this policy to the attention of the policy committee. It's something I think we'll take a look at. I can tell you it is common practice, and I've spoken with several superintendents in other districts who have done building projects, that the scope or the requirement for background checks is usually in the scope of the contract, and it's done by the general contractor. And that is the case with the contract that we have with our contractor. They are responsible for doing those background checks. It is very difficult on a large-scale construction project when you have hundreds of subcontractors potentially who are working, have no contact with children and no contact with staff, to do background checks through the superintendent's office. I do think that this is something the policy committee should look at and review to determine if we want to make changes. If there are changes that we're going to make, we just have to address the issue that we have a small human resources department. In fact, they're all seated at this table tonight. And if we're going to move forward with the building project where we are going to assume additional responsibility for background checks, we're talking about the possibility of adding additional staffing to the human resources department.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
On an up note, I did receive notification today that the Eversource has an energy efficiency incentive rebate to us, or an incentive offer to us for just under $9,000. to offset some of the costs that we're incurring for insulation, energy recovery units, more efficient heating, and that sort of thing. So,
No, sorry, little miss, couldn't hear you too well, but $9,000 you said? $9,000. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any questions on the 60s wing? All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Giard. Mr. Giard, he's on the town communication liaison after 5-6 months. How long has it been? It's been about 5-6 months. I think it's been about 5-6 months. About just setting expectations and what it is that your role will be based on different discussions you've had with the town so far.
So I would say that right now we're still at the starting point of this whole thing. We've had a couple of different meetings. I've had a couple of different meetings with different groups, different committees from the town. Currently, the communication committee and I are putting together monthly write-ups for what's going on within the school district, and that's coming out in the monthly newsletter, the town newsletter that the communication committee is putting out there. If you are not seeing that publication, you can sign up for it right on the town website. There's a link that you can opt into it so that you can get that that newsletter. I strongly suggest that anybody who wants to know what's going on within the town get that and sign up for it. It's a very good communication that's put together by that committee. That would be the foundation of what we've started. From here, we've got some meetings set up with the budget committee. I'm going to start attending some of the selectmen meetings, and then other town committees, including Civic Club, including the recreational committee. Any committees that I can touch base with and partner with to, one, get out the word on what's going on within the schools, and two, to partner with them in case there's an overlap on things like budget. One of the things Mr. Smith and I talked about the other day was, the town buys an excess amount of paper. We buy an excess amount of paper. If we can do things to combine our resources and combine our purchasing to reduce the costs overall for the town, it's something that is worth exploring. It's going to go slow. I'm going to be very transparent with that. It's going to go slow. It's going to be a process. But as I meet with most of these committees, we're going to start game planning more and more, and we're going to grow this. This is just the starting point of it, but over the next 3 years, we're going to see that really take off.
That's great. Any questions for Jason? Yeah, I did talk to Sean Murphy. He had mentioned to me about the capital improvement planning that would be happening. So I told him you'll probably be that person to be reaching out to. So I'm sure you'll hear from Sean, or if I hear from Sean again, I'll make sure to keep on funneling your way.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Let's see. Next one is about board members. There's in your packets, there's some information here about COVID bonus substitute pay. And, in the past, last year, we had instituted a substitute stipend, and want to have that discussion today about reinstating that. As we all know, we are in need of subs for any given time due to the pandemic, either teachers being out or if we need additional help for whatever reason for students that are quarantined. So in your packets you see, I believe, 2 handouts on the substitute stipend about what we would like to implement. And it is at the bottom where you see additional $50 bonus is what we're looking to re-implement for this school year.
Is that
And
daily?
So I was going to turn over to Mr. Thompson or to Mr. Dowd, just in case we want to ask any questions or walk through this a bit more.
Yeah, so essentially what I asked the board to do is to approve the continuation of the $50, I guess what we've dubbed the COVID bonus. Again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It is incredibly difficult to get substitutes, and offering them what is a fairly competitive daily rate is to the advantage of our students and to our staff. And so I would ask that not only do we approve it for the 2021-22 school year, but we make it retroactive, so any of our substitutes who have been serving in the capacity of substitute can receive that bonus. And it also, at the conclusion of the year, I think it warrants the conversation about long-term implementing a fairly competitive substitute rate. I think that this can be done at a relatively low budget impact because we don't have a lot of substitutes. Oftentimes, teachers are covering for each other. But it definitely is something we want to stay as competitive as possible.
Is this substitutes or is this paras as well?
It would be paras as well. Anyone serving, it would be a para educator as well as a teacher.
And it's $50 a day?
It is
Every 5?
$50 a day.
Okay.
So any other questions from?
Yeah, I understand the reason for this and agree with the reason for this. But with that $50 bonus a day, are we inadvertently paying our fill-in paras and fill-in subs more than our full-time paras?
You want to try to answer that, Mr. Brown?
It could be possible. I mean, that could be possible. It really depends on where the para is on the salary scale.
That's something that we should probably find a way to take a look at. I know we're under contract. I understand that part of it. But if we're, in essence, paying somebody new to come in and we're not taking care of the ones that we already have, that's not really a good look that I necessarily want to be a part of. But we have to, something to think about, something to look at.
I agree with that, Jason. We need to be taking care of the, paras that we have and the substitutes we have
Just,
as well.
I'd hate
so-
to see us lose some of the paras, some of the great paras that we have because we're treating others differently and taking care of them versus taking care of the ones we have.
We've had robust discussions in the office on that topic, so thank you from a board perspective for having awareness of that potential issue.
Yeah, that could definitely be problematic. Because, as everybody knows, as soon as you start figuring out what other people make, it becomes a huge problem, and we don't want to have that happen. The people who have stayed we want to keep them, and, they do the job they do is amazing and important, so we want to keep that in mind.
I just want to confirm, though, one question, because I agree with you. I don't want to dismiss that. I do agree. We want to make it fair because everybody does know. It's all public knowledge and public record. On the bottom of the sheet that I'm looking at, that's why I was confused, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Dowd. It says 5-day bonus for every 5 days of substituting is $50.
Also $50. So if a substitute works 5 days, not in a row, but just on their fifth, when they've covered their fifth shift, they would be entitled to a bonus of $50, which is something that we've done as a district for many, many years.
Okay.
As an incentive to, and encourage our substitutes to continue substituting with the district on an ongoing basis.
Okay. All right. So I believe we need a vote on this, correct? We need a motion and a vote? This is something we're trying to make sure to re-implement for this year. So I'll be looking for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve the $50 bonus COVID pay for substitute paraeducators and teachers.
Okay. Looking for a second?
I just have a concern about the,
We can do a discussion.
Okay.
It's just if anybody wants a second.
Well, second,
Okay. So discussion?
do we want to mention something about making it retroactive?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Can we add, I'd like to amend it to include, to be effective retroactively to the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year?
Okay.
Right?
Second.
And still a second? Okay. All right. So discussion? Yeah?
I just worry about that piece, about the substitutes making more than what the people we have in-house already. Like, I'm okay with this, but I'm not okay with that. So it's a little difficult. I'm finding myself torn there.
Kim?
I totally agree with everything everyone said. That we're in a situation, like you mentioned, Jason, we have a contract in place for our unions, and I understand certainly the concern. We can't change that right now. And we are in a situation where we really need substitutes. And we're in like a three, I think we're only on the second year of our 3-year contract with Hass. I believe it was just last year. So I think it's great that we're talking about it, and it's something that we have to consider for the next round of talks, but we can't, like, we're locked into that. You can't change that stuff at all. So I just want to bring that up. It's not that I disagree at all with what's being said. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
We're kind of in a situation we can't change right now.
Right, holding back one because of another, when one we're locked into, I agree. We can't hold ourselves back if we know we're under dire need, and this may or may not help. Don't know if somebody will because they see this, but I think we need to do something to be competitive and to ensure that we are supporting the students. Without this, we can definitely lack supporting students.
Okay.
That's
well,
my
I'm
opinion.
glad to have that on the record, though, that's where so we can hopefully, when the time comes to renegotiate that, we can bring that up.
I think we need to, negotiate. We'll have to look at it when negotiating.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, that's what, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. All approve, Rishi? All right, passed unanimously. All right. Thank you for that, everybody. Definitely did good discussion and think about in the future. Next one is about policy CBI and CBR, which is the evaluation of superintendent update. Just to remind everybody what this was about is over the summer, the school board worked together to review the existing policy CBI and to really rewrite it to make it more what we feel more applicable, goal-driven, measurable. And what we had asked was to then have Mr. Thompson and his team take a look at the essentially a 360 review that his team would be responsible for. So, Mr. Thompson, you're going to give an update where we're at?
Sure. Yeah. So I had shared the feedback tool with the administrative team. There wasn't a significant amount of feedback. I think that was, a sign that there was general agreement about the scale. But most recently, we brought the policy to the policy committee, and you'll see highlighted. So I just want to be clear, we're not bringing it to the board for a first reading, and I say that because there's a significant amount of work that needs to be done to it. We were able to get through the timeline on the front page, which I still have some concerns about that we can talk about in a minute. We didn't really get to dig in too much to the scale. So this is a policy I think that we're going to be working on for some time in addition to other policies. But I did want to walk through some of the changes that we made on the first page. So the evaluation of the superintendent, when we had our work sessions, what I had heard folks, board members say was we wanted timelines. We wanted to be able to, really attempt to put the evaluation to rest prior to the turnover of a new board so that the superintendent's receiving an evaluation from the seated board. So to do that, we, as a policy committee, met last week and we developed these timelines. So if you look at number 1, no later than January 10th, at the direction of the school board chair, the 360 direct feedback report form will be distributed to all direct reports. Then we went on to the compiled responses and completed self-evaluation are provided to the board at their final January meeting. And number 3, we said at the compiled responses of the superintendent's evaluation form by the school board will then be distributed to all members at the school board meeting at a scheduled meeting in the first week of February. And then it goes on to say that no later than March 1st, the board would go into a non-public session to approve the written evaluation of the superintendent. And then prior to the school board election, The chair and vice chair will meet with the superintendent to review his or her evaluation. Now, this timeline right here would allow for the process of the evaluation of the superintendent to occur prior to the turnover of the board. One thing that I think the board should consider and discuss is this is an aggressive timeline. And, you know, in conversations that I've had with members of my staff, there's some concern about the month of February. We have, you know, public meeting, deliberative session. There's a hyper attention on the budget. So we have this conflict. Do we create the month of February as we're going to spend a lot of quality time as a group together because we're trying to get through a budget, potentially trying to get a warrant article passed for an addition, and we're spending a significant amount of time evaluating the superintendent. If the goal is to do this before a new board, we will have to develop a very aggressive timeline like the one you see in front of you. If we say, okay, this maybe isn't doable, maybe the new board will have to play a role in the supervision and evaluation of the superintendent, then we would look to extend this out into May or June. It doesn't seem to me that there's a perfect solution to the problem that is presented here. And Caitlin, I don't know, have you been part of these conversations, if there's anything else to add?
No, I think that sums it up well. It is an aggressive timeline. I mean, I don't want to just repeat what you said, but one of my thoughts about pushing it further out is on a 5-member board, you could have 2 brand new people who've never really worked with the superintendent before, and I don't particularly feel like that's fair to either those new board members or the superintendent to have an evaluation, which really comes down to perhaps 3 people that have worked with them. But going back, I mean, how much time do we all want to spend together in January and February? So, as Mr. Thompson pointed out, we wanted to kind of bring this to the board, not as a first read, but to start getting more feedback. We did spend a lot of time on it as a board, workshopping these pieces this summer, but there's just a lot to put into it. So before the policy committee went even further, we wanted to get just some initial feedback from the board on their thoughts on the timeline.
Yeah, question here I have is, you know, what was mentioned from you, Mr. Thompson, was spending a lot of time together in January, February, right? When I'm looking at this, there's really only 2 meetings that would have to happen, though, right? One is the meeting that would be a first week of February, right? And then 3 meetings if you want. So it's the one that's at the beginning of February, then the non-public session, which could be done somewhere in that time frame, I guess, and then the March 1st meeting to give the evaluation to you, correct? So it's 2 meetings with the board, and then there's 1 meeting with you, with the chair and co-chair.
I think we were also adding that to like deliberative and stuff like that. That's where the whole spending a lot of time together came into play.
I think it's the time not only that the board is meeting, but also the time that administration, superintendent is preparing the background work for in support of that evaluation.
Right.
And that's a very busy time of the year for that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the first meeting in February is your deliberative, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to go look for. I actually don't have that on.
But we had discussed that we may have to call a special meeting for that first week of February to stick to this guideline, that it might not be part of the deliberative, it might not be a part of a regular schedule, that it might have to be a special meeting that we called. And I think that's where we start getting into those extra meetings and that extra time, because some months it won't line up right if we're going to stick to these guidelines.
Yeah. I think part of me is I'm not so much worried about the meetings that would have to take place. What I have more concerns about is what does the SAU office have to do to prepare for this on top of the other, the workload in that time frame. So I think I'd like to know a little, if you haven't done that yet, I think that makes a little bit of sense to understand is what is going on that, you know, in January and February take this out of it, right? But then put this on top of that, knowing how long it's taken in the past. Now, it's not a 14-member board like the old SAU, so it's a little bit less putting together and compiling, but just curiosity how that's going to impact workload. Because the intent is not just to, have people working 15, 20 hours a day and through the weekends.
Right.
So I think that would be helpful for myself, at least.
Would it be possible for our next policy meeting to have, Jeff there with us, have Melissa there with us, and cover those things? Because those were key pieces that we weren't able to talk about during the last policy
Okay.
meeting.
Yep.
But if we had their insight, where you guys have both been through that before, it might play into what we do and what we decide to bring to the board once we have your knowledge and your background information on it.
Yeah. I think for myself, I'd appreciate that, more information like that, because, again, if I look at what's here is, I guess that would be number 3 that's crossed out. It says, the compiled responses are going to be provided to the school board, right? It doesn't say, we have to have a special meeting for that per se, I don't think. We could do that as part of one of the other meetings at the beginning of February, because that's just handing it out. It's not, we don't have to do too much with it, because then after that, it says, then we're going to go into non-public. Now, that's the meeting we have to figure out when that's going to be scheduled, right? So that's really I'm looking at, really, that's the meeting we're talking about that's needed, that's in addition to everything else we do in February.
And we talked a lot about the extra meetings or the extra times at the meetings.
Yeah.
But what did not come up was the behind-the-scenes work.
Right.
And that's probably the piece that's missing here, and it's something that we definitely need to look at and take into consideration.
Okay.
The meetings themselves, I was fine with this timeline, but hearing what Jeff and Mr. Thompson had to say,
Yep.
I understand that aspect now, and
Yeah.
we'd have to dig more into that to make sure that we're not burdening them and pushing off other things that they need to be working on.
Right, because the intention there is for that timeline was to make sure that the superintendent received an evaluation from the whole board,
Right.
not to overburden with work. So, yeah, I would agree with that.
There's another thing. I think for me right now, the important thing, and maybe this is, we're not approving the CBI, but for the CBI is just making sure that, we have let's say, an agreed upon what the goals are, what we're going to be, evaluating. So I think that's really important. We have that done, right? So all the rest of this, while important, this can take a little while so we get it right. But as long as, you know what you're being evaluated against, which you do now, I think that's important. We've done that. So the homework is really done there. So just want to make sure people know that and acknowledge, board members acknowledge, we're not going to be changing that piece of it.
Right.
This is simply about the front cover of the, the timeline, and then hearing what is going to be done by the 360 if there's any changes there. That's what we're looking for changes that's left, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I also did want to highlight, there is one other piece of this policy or these procedures that we worked on. If you look on the back of the page 1, so page 2 of CBIR, we developed a scale. Originally, the board had said they wanted it to be a 1 through 6. We had a hard time following directions, so we're asking for forgiveness and not permission. But wanted to have the conversation with the board. We, for a variety of reasons, we had a difficult time coming up with the descriptions of the 6, and we really settled on 4, and we wanted to provide that feedback here to the board. So it's a 1 through 4 scale, 1 being strongly disagree, 2 being disagree, 3 being agree, and then a 4 being strongly agree. Again, we had this conversation at the work session. We don't want a 5-point scale. We don't like neutral. We want people to kind of take a position either in the positive or not so. And we just thought 6 might be a little too broad. And so we landed on 4. I thought we'd have that. We can certainly go back and do 6 if people feel very strongly about that. But this is where we've landed.
All right.
And part of that discussion with the 6-point scale, number 3 and number 4 would end up being like a sometimes agrees, sometimes disagrees, somewhat agrees. Like the verbiage was going to be so almost insignificant that if you chose a 3 or a 4, you were still almost voting neutral, realistically. So to go into the 4-point system kind of prevented that from happening.
Yep. I think, for myself, I'm good with that. I think that it would be good just to have, my opinion on this, is just like a sentence or two behind each one, so that people will understand, like, agree, as an example, means something, and I'm going to say something like, did it, but there's room for improvement, and that'll be part of the feedback, versus strongly agree, like, knocked it out of the park, you know. I'm not saying that that's what you're going to put, knocked it out of the park, but just because I think for us 5 here, we're going to know what these mean, but if this is to be carried forward for future board members to understand, hey, this is what you're looking for as the measurement here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that just adding that would be, for myself, would be good, but I don't know what other members think about that.
Yeah, I think we had talked about having a comment section for each question, or they're not questions.
Each goal.
Each goal.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yep, I think it makes sense.
Okay. Aaron?
I agree with that. They do even do that at Pinkerton when you get their
Yeah.
grades. Jesus, there's a fly in here. I'm sorry. It's like attacking me. So I've been trying really hard to ignore it. But anyway, so they they do that at Pinkerton with the different scales, and I always read that.
Okay.
So I think that would be good to have up here, and then also to have a little description of why you strongly agree or disagree.
Okay. And you good with 4-point versus 6-point? Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Unless anything else from board members? Okay. So that concludes our current business. Board comments and correspondence. I'll start over in the far end and work our ways around. Jason?
All I really have is that we did have the policy meeting. This obviously took up the majority of that time. And we'll continue to work on that as we go through other policies.
And I have a fly swatter now.
Thank you, Mrs. Donola. But thank you, Jason.
I can't
Policy. Yeah,
compete with that.
I can't compete with that. All right. Caitlin?
Just policy committee.
Okay.
And like, I think Mrs. Denola should share the water that she shared with all of us. She should bring it to board meetings. So I'm going to petition for that to happen.
All right.
So I don't have anything else.
I don't have anything.
All right. For myself, two things really. Kudos to the sports teams. I think they've been doing really well. I've been fortunate enough to see a few of the games, both home and away. I think that they're all doing very well. Field hockey is doing really well, just all around. So thank you to the coaches, the parents that are coming out to support. Yesterday I was at the soccer game for the girls' soccer game, and I think there was the most parents I've seen at any game so far. So that was great to see. A lot of support. And then just correspondence. I know we've got a number of emails from parents in the community. Just know that we're all reading them. We all take them into account. Sometimes I'm the only one that responds as the chair, but other times other members do. Mr. Thompson's been doing a great job of responding to them all. So please know that we do read them, we do consider them, and we thank you for the support.
I echo that same sentiment as David on the emails. We are listening, and
I want to speak a little bit more.
we're listening, and we hear you, and thank you for your emails. So we had the strategic planning meeting yesterday, and it was great. I enjoyed it. I was a little nervous about what to expect, but it was actually really, really great. I'm looking forward to seeing where we go with that. It's a great group, and I'm actually really looking forward to also hearing how it goes with the other group of parents. I think you have another group.
Focus group.
So I'm excited to see that as well. So.
Good. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thompson for consent agenda.
Okay, there is a personnel report in your board packet asking for the board to approve the hiring of Caitlin Coleman. She would fill the 51% or half-time BCBA position at the Central School. This is a vacancy that came open over the summertime. A BCBA is essentially a behavior specialist. The BCBA, another educational acronym, stands for Board Certified Behavior Analysis. This is a person especially with the focus on SEL and looking at student behavior, that I know the staff is very excited to get into place. They will work both directly with students and help to train some of our teachers and paraeducators on working with some children that might have some behavioral difficulties. Caitlin Coleman has several years of experience as a BCBA, and we're very fortunate, especially that the school year has started, that we're able to find such a highly qualified professional to come join our team.
All right, board members will be looking for a motion to accept the personnel report and nomination.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Ms. Pellegrini. All approved? All right, passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, if I could, one quick thing that may save a few emails coming into the board, hopefully. Our adequacy aid that we received from the state was projected to be very low this year based on free and reduced applications and a number of other factors due to the pandemic. Over the summer, the legislature amended or corrected their formula. Mr. Thompson has been in my office. He's seen the sheets that are about this big, all put together to try and sort out what the formulas are. It turns out that they've adjusted their formulas. They're much more equitable, and we're in line to receive about $569,000 more than what was originally contemplated. What we understood it to be in the spring, it's now $560,000 more than what it was then. It's $135,000 greater than it was last year. You may hear, and I'm not sure why this is, but you may hear of other districts having special meetings to accept or to raise and appropriate their additional amount of adequacy aid. We weren't the only district to be a beneficiary of this plan. Other districts were as well. And essentially, the way that I'm looking at it, and I think the board will probably support this, but you tell me, our voters have been very generous to us. They've been very supportive of the schools. The budget that was voted on by the voters in March, let's just say it was, for purposes of keeping it simple, let's just say that budget was $30 million. Other districts are essentially having meetings to accept their additional adequacy aid and to allow for expenditures of it. So they're essentially trying to raise their budgets, it would appear, by the amount of that additional adequacy aid. So if our budget were, let's just keep it simple, $30 million as voted by our voters, a special meeting would increase that to $30,569,000. That money is money that is provided to us from the state to assist and really reduce the burden on our local taxpayers. So I would say our budget, as was voted, would remain what it is. Right. That $569,000 that we're receiving should be going to provide taxpayer relief to our local taxpayers. So it's a little trend that seems to be going on in a number of districts. I have a bunch of ways that we could spend $569,000. The voters came out, they voted, we have our budget, and the money that's coming in is money to provide tax relief. So just to provide a little bit of clarity for that for you, because it seems to be a hot issue that's going to be coming up quite a bit, and hopefully this will be informative to the board and to the public, that we did receive more adequacy. Really net year over year, it's $135,000. I'm very appreciative of that. That needs to go right back to the taxpayers. So that's up to the board. If you have any other thoughts on that, certainly let me know. We can arrange for a special meeting, but.
Board members?
I would agree with what Mr. Dowd said. Let's go that direction. It doesn't really make sense to.
Right.
This is just, it offsets it. So.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd raise $569, and then you'd raise your expenditure budget by $569,000. So the taxpayers are still paying more than they were paying last year, and this money really is meant to offset that local tax burden.
So just make sure, without the vote, it returns it to the taxpayers immediately.
Yeah. Well, at tax rate setting time through.
I'm sorry?
Through tax rate setting, yes.
Right. But I mean, essentially, we turn that over back to the town immediately.
Yeah.
In the town through tax relief, et cetera, yes.
It would lower their tax bills.
Yeah.
immediately.
Okay.
So it's beyond me why this is going on in other districts, but I thought that this board should be made aware as to what's going on and what your philosophy is and how it ties into what we've historically done. So,
Nope, I
yeah,
think,
No,
strange.
thank you for that information. I appreciate that.
Very strange.
yep, so unless you need a vote, we are all in agreement that's the process we've done, that's the process we should be working towards, and that's what it's for, so
Yep.
let it be.
Yeah, I don't think you need a vote. It's
All right.
fine.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Yep.
And again, that was just under $570,000.
569.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, superintendent's report. So, Mr. Thompson?
Sure. I just wanted to start by letting the board know that my office has received a petition for a special meeting. The petition, I have reviewed that petition, so has Mr. Dowd, and tomorrow we'll be forwarding it to the supervisor of the checklist for voter verification. So I don't know if anyone has any questions in regard to that. And I'll keep the board apprised of the results of that being sent to the supervisor of the checklist. I'd like to turn it over to start the superintendent's report to Nicole Tomaselli, who can update us on a couple of items relative to curriculum instruction and assessment.
Hi, good evening. So just to give you a heads up, there's a few areas we could talk about. I know last time I was here, we asked a few questions about the after-school programming. So I just wanted to give you a quick update that our teachers are submitting proposals for after-school clubs and activities. Initially, we had thought we would start them next week, but we are going to push the date back one more week, just to give parents time to sign up and also so that we don't have a conflict on October 7th with the Play for the Cure event. So there's a very important fundraiser happening here at the middle school on Thursday afternoon, and we'll just avoid the conflict altogether by pushing the clubs back another week. But just to give you a sense of some of the activities that are going to be coming online, hopefully within the next week or so, parents will be getting emails very shortly. We're going to have a Play to Learn club, a Strategies Games club, a jewelry making club, a robotics club. The Select Choir is going to be starting up, the jazz band. There's also going to be a new program called Beginning Band for 6th grade to offer them a little bit more opportunities. We're going to have Let Go Your Mind come back to Central School. And I would encourage, if teachers are listening and they want to propose, we'll take their proposals still. We also have secured busing on Mondays and Wednesdays from the Central School, and Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from the middle school. And I want to reiterate to parents, though, that those bus stops will not be the same as their normal bus stops. Those are going to be, I think they call them group stops. So I want parents to be aware that the bus routes will be a little bit different for after school, like a late bus type of model. But I'm really excited about that. And, well, Hawk Happenings. Did I say Hawk Happenings? I'm sorry. Hawk Happenings is a combined creative writing and newspaper club that's getting proposed as well. So I'm very happy to see that teachers who have been teaching specific clubs for a long time are going to continue to offer them, but they're taking on some new angles, too, to bring in additional opportunities for students. Around connection coaching. So connection coaching is what we're doing with students who are out on quarantine to reach out to those families. We have had quite a few students take advantage and families take advantage of connection coaching. I think the first round of kiddos that weren't able to join us at the beginning of the school year have come back. We've gotten some really great feedback from parents around letting their children stay current with their classes. So I just want to thank all the teachers that have kind of picked up those opportunities, and Lori Lynn Griffin for helping to coordinate. It's been very successful. And it's we're working out the logistics of making it successful between the teachers and the families. So I'm very happy with how that's going. We also have a first round of iReady assessments happening in both schools this week. And I wanted to just clarify that we will have state required assessments that are more what's the word I'm looking for? These are more localized assessments that help us track the direction of our instruction in a more responsive way. So these are not your big standardized tests that the state will require us to administer. That will happen later in the spring. But iReady is going to be a big part of our responsiveness and our instructional boosts. Once we have these baseline data, we can really target the instruction and get kids into appropriate skill level groups. So this is really important assessment information for teachers to know who's in front of them and what some of those holes are in their learning. But if anyone has questions about any of this, I'm happy to answer. Megan?
So just a question on the bus routes. Will they be posted on the central school and middle school websites?
Yep, except what I want to clarify is that the after-school bus is not open to just anyone. You need to be registered in a club to get on that bus. And I'm not as concerned at the central school about the bus being overfull, but I am very concerned at the middle school because we have a lot of kids here for after-school programs like sports that we have 77 seats, and we're not going to be able to offer rides to sports kids on that bus just yet until we know how many have registered and enrolled. So yes, the routes will be posted, but it's not a jump on the bus today kind of option.
And when should parents be receiving the information about all this?
We've accepted proposals through Monday, so we have a meeting, the principals and I, to discuss which ones we're going to go with, and we're going to build a website to describe all of the different club opportunities and have a Google form. I would say probably by the end of the week, maybe, or
Okay.
early next week.
So in the next 2 weeks.
Very soon.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
So
Thank
is
you.
there a charge for these clubs, or these are all free clubs? Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I didn't know if you had connected at all with PTSA, because I know they do enrichment after
did.
schools. Okay, great.
I did talk to PTSA. As I understand, they do enrichment after schools, and I wanted to be really careful to not, overstep on some of their fundraising opportunities. These ones will not have a charge, but we're going to be having ongoing dialogue. So one of the things in the meeting is to make sure that none of these topics are things that they are going to be running for enrichment.
Great.
And they reiterated that they're very supportive of us running clubs after school. And I'm going to be talking with Lauren again probably tomorrow and the next day.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Do you
questions?
want me to do the tech update now or no? Okay, so the other exciting thing is we had our RFP out for the tech bid for this space. We had the walkthrough on, I think it was the 21st. We have 2 vendors that came and participated and asked some pretty interesting questions, but we will be opening the bid up on Thursday. So we expect to be getting their actual, offers on Thursday. And Jeff Dowd's going to help with that Zoom. So the things are moving forward with the tech update as well. So I'm very excited about that.
In the bidding that opens up on Thursday is only to those 2 companies, or is that anybody?
Only to people who participated in the mandatory walkthrough.
Okay, because I thought you had said before we had 3, so I'm assuming somebody didn't want
We
to
did have
participate.
3, and then that company decided to withdraw.
Okay. I know, pretty exciting to get, because I know I've received this, communications with emails or texts or even phone calls that this really stinks over here.
I know.
So I look forward to it. I know a lot of the community
Yeah.
does, so.
Yeah, it will be hopefully a full new outfit with HD cameras, everything, and it will be the TriCaster in there has some limitations right now. So one of the things we included in our bid request are wireless mics as well as the wired mics, so that we can do performances and other things that I think the hardwired mics work well for the board meeting, but we want to
Yep.
be able to utilize the space for a variety of uses.
No, that's great. Timeline that we're looking at,
So that's one of the questions that kind of has come up is, cost of bid versus frequency, or like the relevant speed that they can get the installation done. So we'll be discussing that when we see the bids and make our decision. But I hesitate to even give a date because I really need to hear from the companies first.
Okay. I think maybe, I know we're going to go non-public tonight, and I don't know, this might influence the bidding, so I don't want to say it out loud, but maybe as a board, we can just talk about timeline a little bit. What we're, give you a timeline that we're thinking of, maybe for some major milestones or anything coming up. That way it might help. That way it might make sense.
I think that's it.
And I'd just like to highlight too the connection coaching because you know, in conversations that other districts had with other districts, actually asked us for a copy of the framework. They can borrow from it. Nicole, and I know Nicole, her circles, the same thing. This is work that we're sharing with other districts. Because there's not a lot of other districts that are offering children that have to quarantine, live instruction, personalized instruction, really one-on-one with a certified educator or a small group of educators. And it's really a collective of individuals that worked on this framework, but it's above and beyond. And I know from my own personal experience that, you know, a lot of children that are in quarantine are going to a Google Classroom or they're working out of a workbook, but they don't have that daily connection or access to an adult. And it's wonderful. I got to sit in with Nicole and Lori Lynn on an advisory, you know, and it was wonderful to sit with these kids that are sitting in their living room, and we're going around talking about if we could have one superpower, what would it be? To the delight of these kids in quarantine. And then there's other students who are in other districts that are sitting in quarantine, and they don't have that access to their peers or to an adult. So there's some tremendous work going on there. Further into the superintendent report, I know we're going to spend some time talking about our COVID response and face coverings, but I really do want to highlight a really important piece of our work, and that is the work that's going on in our classrooms. And the last couple weeks have been extraordinary. As a leadership team, we've had the opportunity to get into classrooms, sometimes together, to see just the tremendous work that our teachers are doing with kids every day. And in some regards, you may not know that there are these great debates that are out there raging around COVID-19, because I don't see that in our classrooms. I see high-quality instruction. You know, Nicole and I got to do a movement activity called the Dinosaur Stomp in second grade. And if you don't know what that is, because I didn't know what it is, Google it. Your life will be changed forever. I also learned about Henry and Mudge. I did not know about Henry and Mudge. It's a wonderful book series. And I can tell you, first and second graders, they are crazy about Henry and Mudge. For us, older generation, it's a little bit like Clifford the Big Red Dog, but on just like a whole new level. Also, some really engaging conversations in grade 3 around community. What is community? What's the purpose of community? What's the value? What are different types of communities? So very appropriate conversations going on in third grade. And then in fifth grade, I was in Mrs. Howard's class, and we were on the iPads doing a geography challenge. And I was competing with a young man who beat me pretty badly. He definitely knows his geography much better than I do. He's much faster at it. And I have a degree in history. So what does that tell you? So there's a lot of really great stuff going on in classrooms. And that's where we as leaders, we find our sanity by going and spending time amongst our teachers and watching our kids learn. So with that, I'll just go into one other sort of non-COVID update, and that is today members of the leadership team met with the leadership of the association to look at blizzard bags. So I have received a lot of feedback in my superintendent entry meetings from staff, from parents, from community members, from board members about
I haven't discussed it with
about blizzard bags. So I asked to get together with the association, and I got to tell you, I said let's have a first meeting where we just maybe get some ideas out on the table. We walked away with a general sense of agreement of a proposal that we will bring to this board, but what we would be looking to do would be to create some remote learning days. We want to value and honor the fact that snow days are oftentimes important times for kids to make snowmen and have snowball fights and go sledding. But we also realize the importance of continuity of education and direct instruction. And if there has been anything that of value that has come out of the pandemic, it is remote instruction and remote learning. So we're looking at a model that we would like to implement, again, that is a balance of academic continuity, and then it's a snow day, let's have some fun. So you can expect, I would say, sometime in late October or early November, I'd bring a proposal to this board for their consideration. And it was interesting in speaking with the commissioner late last week. You know, we had already began some of these conversations, and he had urged districts to do just that. He said this may be, you know, the days of the blizzard bag are gone. Let's now look at remote learning. I think based upon our conversation today, we've got a tentative plan that is really going to be of value to students. So I don't know if there's any questions in regards to blizzard bags before we move into our conversation about COVID-19.
I think my opinion, I don't know board members, but you know, we've had snow here on Halloween, and so my request would be, could we have this in October? That way we can at least have some, you know, if there's further discussions that go into November that need to be had. But I would request if we can have this in October. I mean, I'm hopeful that we're going to get snow in October, but I know most people aren't. But I don't know, board members, does that make sense?
Makes sense.
I just want to, I really appreciate this look at something that at the time I think blizzard bags were a good way to deal with lots of missed school or lots of snow. But we have different technology now, and maybe this is one benefit of this horrible pandemic, to kind of have it evolve while still giving some traditional snow days. So I just appreciate the work going into it.
Yep, absolutely.
Weird. I think before going into anything about COVID-19, I didn't know if you were going to speak about your have a cup of coffee with the superintendent meeting at all, if it's worth mentioning now or later.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week I hosted a coffee and conversation with the superintendent at our new SAU office. And really just an open forum, come sit down. You know, I've had a ton of communication, as David had indicated, with parents, you know, on the phone and through email about COVID-19. And this was just an opportunity to get together and what do you have to say? Let's have a conversation. And you know, it was a small group. I think there was 5 of us total. But it was refreshing. Yeah, we did talk about, you know, face coverings and pandemic response, but we also talked, you know, about math curriculum, and we talked about reading curriculum and enrichment and differentiation. Like, you know, COVID-19 has dominated the discourse in public education, but there needs to be room to have conversations about instructional things and things that parents worry about with their own children. And this is just an opportunity to do that. I thought it went really well. It was civil. We had great conversations. So what I'm going to be doing, I'd like to do at least once a month prior to a board meeting. If we did a 5:30 to 6:30 coffee and conversation with the superintendent, you know, I can hear from the public, and then I can come here and, you know, articulate some of those thoughts here, because not everybody wants to get up on camera at a public meeting to express their opinions. So a smaller, more intimate opportunity is a good way to go. So we'll keep those going, and we'll keep them open. The agenda will just be whatever it is that folks want to talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I know personally, I think I know 3 of the members of the community that went there, and each one reached out and said that was really great to have. So I encourage and appreciate that you're continuing that.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so we have finalized an agreement with Convenient MD. We've entered into a contract with them to offer the Safer at Schools screening program. That's PCR testing that will be done twice per month, once at the Central School on the first Wednesday of the month, and then once at the Hsdsb Middle School on the third Wednesday of the month. This testing is free to parents. A link went out today where parents can sign up for that testing. It's also open to staff as well, so we would encourage our staff to sign up. I signed up this morning. The testing will take place from approximately 11 o'clock to 12:45. It's done very discreetly. It takes about 15 minutes from the time a child leaves the class to the time that they return. Parents would receive a login to a secure portal where they're able to review those results. And the only individual that will have access on the school side would be the school nurse, your child's school nurse. And I say that, you know, if there were a positive case, our protocol would kick in. We would do contact tracing. which would mean that at a minimum, the building principal would be notified of that positive case. We'll be able to maintain this testing as long as we have approximately 50 participants per building. The survey that we sent out earlier in the month did indicate that we're around that number, so I'm hopeful we can keep the testing going. And one piece that I didn't communicate to parents, participating in this program provides us with a partnership with Convenient MD. If we identify a cluster in a classroom, I can reach out to Convenient MD and say, can you come over tomorrow and can we test and we do PCR testing for a class? And as long as a parent has signed up and agrees to that, that child would participate in that program, so that overall we can increase the amount of testing. We can be on the proactive side of our response. Again, completely optional. I was pleased to see a number of parents reached out to me today. They had a number of questions about the program. I'm happy to continue to answer those questions. You can also reach out to Convenient MD as well. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions that the board may have about the Safer at School screening program.
Quick question. Is this something that a parent would have to sign up for by a deadline, or if they decide not to sign up within the next couple weeks, but they decide 3-4 weeks down the road that they want to sign up, would they be able to sign up then?
They can. As far as the deadline, and so for example, the October 6th at the Central School, I don't know what the deadline is. I can certainly find that out and communicate that to parents. I do know I did ask the question about, I understand. There's some parents who have reached out to me. They're a little hesitant about participating in this program. I think, they want to see how it goes, and then they may make that decision, and that's perfectly acceptable. I think the goal would be, once this becomes a standard routine in our building, I would think more people would begin to access the program.
And this is obviously done by somebody from Convenient MD.
It
They're doing the
is.
test,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. Any other questions about this? Okay, thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Okay. And then I just wanted to move on and speak. So on the Hsdsb website, there is a link under our COVID resources. You can click on that link, and it will tell you the active cases in the Hsdsb school. Currently, we've had a total of 6 cases. And I wanted to address something. I did send an email out on Saturday because we were notified of an additional case in grade 1. There was reason to believe at that time that the 3 cases were connected. And 3 cases is significant because that is defined as a cluster. And under our matrix and the Department of Health and Human Services matrix, a cluster would result in us moving to universal masking. I made the decision on Saturday after speaking with Dr. Cheney that we would move to universal masking. We were unable on the weekend to get in touch with the Department of Health and Human Services, so for the safety of students, we moved to universal masking. That was communicated to parents on Saturday. We were able to confirm today with the Department of Health and Human Services that that case at the Central School is not a cluster. They were not able to find evidence that those 3 cases were related. As a result, I communicated to parents that we've now moved back into that targeted phase. Again, if there's a delay in reporting with DHHS, I want to be able to move quickly in making those determinations, knowing that 48 hours may go by and we may have to move to a different phase. With that said, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of the masking protocols that we have in place. There's a couple of items I want to put on the board's radar, and I want the public to be made aware of too. One of the challenges with the protocols that we have, the school does not have the ability to have a close contacts quarantine. So last school year, if you were identified as a close contact to a child with COVID-19, you would have to do a 10-day quarantine. We do not have the ability nor the authority to do that. Now, that is concerning because when we have a mask optional or a targeted masking protocol, it allows for students to take their mask off in class. If we have a case in a classroom, there is concern that, we have close contacts, there could be contamination, and we don't have the ability to quarantine those students. I would ask the board to consider, or at least have a conversation about the ability for the administration to be able to put in a 5-day emergency mask order in place when we have a known or identified case in a class. And I say this because we don't have a tool. We had 2 students in a first grade class that were positive. We lack sufficient tools to be able to practice certain mitigation strategies. And in a 5-day temporary mask protocol for a classroom that has students in it who test positive is at least a tool. Why 5? It could be a slightly arbitrary number, but 5 school days at a minimum is 7 days, and at a maximum is 9 days. And Health and Human Services says if you are a close contact, they recommend testing between days 5 and 7. So if we were to consider a masking protocol for a class where there was possible contamination, students are wearing masks, and they will cease wearing masks after that they've been tested and we know whether or not there has been further cases in a classroom. The second piece where I think we're running into some issues, and I actually heard this, I was visiting the middle school today, and I heard students in an advisory class talking today about fairness. Principal Denola talked about all of the virtues we talk about in advisory. This morning's topic was fairness. And a student had mentioned that it didn't seem fair that, there were a number of cases at the central school, and there weren't any at the middle school, and it's not fair that the middle school has to universally mask. And, I have reflected upon that, and, I do think that there should be some consideration when a cluster is identified and we know either the central school or the middle school needs to move to universal masking, that the superintendent's provided the authority to make a decision about the other school. Originally, we received guidance that this was not permissible under the Medical Freedom Act. We've received some further guidance from our legal counsel that says we can, as long as we're not targeting specific populations of vaccinated and unvaccinated students in a school. So with that said, this is the language that I would ask the board to give some consideration to. So the first would be the board grants the superintendent the authority to institute a 5-school-day temporary indoor face covering requirement for a classroom where a confirmed positive case has been identified. And then the second piece of language for your consideration, the board grants the superintendent the authority to institute a universal face covering mandate on an individual school basis when a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cluster is identified. And let me know if you'd like me to repeat those.
Can you repeat the last one? Was it cluster?
Yeah, so essentially, let's look at the situation that we just had on Saturday. You would give me the authority, if we had a known cluster, to require masks at HCS and then evaluate the data for the middle school to determine whether or not it would be appropriate to institute that at the middle school. I would look at, does the confirmed case at the central school, do they have siblings at the middle school? Are there connections through sports clubs, extracurriculars? If there's the connection, I have the authority to say this is universally applied for both schools. If there's not, I have the authority to say this only pertains to the central school.
So you had said that we've had 6 confirmed cases thus far for the school year.
Yes.
So both of the instances that you just brought up, basically that would have only happened once. That we had a cluster, we would have to mask a specific classroom, that we might have to mask in the central school, but not in the middle school. if I'm reading it or understanding it right, we would have only had to go down that road one time so far this year.
That's correct.
Okay, now I need clarification.
Yeah.
So, talking about the 5-day emergency required masks, are we talking about if there's only a cluster in a classroom, or if there is one case in a classroom, we're giving you the authority to 5-day universally mask that classroom?
Yes, and let me give you the example. The data that I would look at in making that determination is the number of close contacts. So I can tell you in some cases, we do have students that are engaging in small group activities. Sometimes there's a morning meeting, and we take a very conservative approach to identifying close contacts. If we don't know, you're a close contact. And so what I would do is I would evaluate that data. Dr. Cheney would say to me, I've got a case in second grade. We've identified 2 close contacts. I'm going to evaluate that information and determine whether I want to do whole class masking. I'll be honest, I'll take a very conservative approach, and if there are a number of close contacts, I would require the 5-day masking. But we're at the mercy of a lack of tools from the Department of Health and Human Services, and honestly, I'm talking to other districts, and there are clusters that are blowing through classrooms, and it in part because there aren't a lot of mitigating strategies if we can't quarantine kids. And so this, to me, is a small step that gives me the authority to put a targeted masking in place when I feel it's appropriate.
And last year, there would have been a greater opportunity to quarantine a number of those students in those classes. That tool is not available this year, so this is one more available option to mitigate.
So you just said that, I want to make sure I got this right, that if there was a large number of close contacts, you would use that opportunity to mask mandate for that class, that school, however.
No, this is just specific to the class.
Okay. Do you have a number? Is there in your mind a set number that says, all right, if we hit 7 close contacts, then we're going to do this, just so that we know that it's, I guess, equal across the board, that it's the same criteria each time that we're making this decision, and that one time it's not 3, the next time it's 10, that we have that consistency?
Yeah, I would hesitate to give you a number because it's sort of the totality of circumstances within the classroom. And so again, when, I'll use the first grade example that, or let me use a generic example. If we have a classroom and there's a confirmed case and no close contacts, but 2 days later another kid tests positive, I'm going to do the 5-day rule. But then we may have a situation where we have a kid that tests positive. We've identified a handful of close contacts, but I go into that classroom, or Dr. Cheney goes into the classroom, and those seats are maximized for space. They're at 6 feet because we're between 3 and 6. That's going to weigh on that decision. Talking to the classroom teacher to say, oh yeah, no, we have not done any group activities. So it's hard for me to give you a number, and if we need to draw a number, I'll be very conservative and say, let the number be 1, but there's so many circumstances. Like I give the principals a ton of credit. The time and intensity that goes into each one of these cases, I don't think people realize. And there's so many circumstances. I would say you would probably more likely than not see the 5-day mask, temporary mask requirement if I were given that authority. I would exercise that more than I probably would not.
Just a question about close contacts. Close contacts is whether they're masked or not, right?
So if they're unmasked, so under our targeted protocol, which is where we're at now, we do contact tracing for 3 feet at 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period. So when universally masked, it's 6 feet. So we have more individuals identified as close contacts when we operate under our targeted protocol.
I understand. What I'm asking is, let's just go down here. You got 5 students that are considered close contacts. They're all masked, right? That would still mean that the entire classroom gets masked, even though the 5 kids are masked. Correct.
If we knew, and again, that can oftentimes go into it, if we knew, we have some classrooms where the vast majority of kids are masking, and then we have others where they're not when we're in that targeted phase. So there would be some consideration given for, does the teacher have evidence, does the administration have evidence that there is a high proportion of students that are masking in the classroom?
Questions?
I just wanted to say that I actually really appreciate what you're saying, that it would be great to have like a number, and then if we hit this, but I think you're putting forward that you're going to put in a lot of time and effort into this to really consider. And I do appreciate that, because I think it is different when you potentially have a kindergarten or first grade group who, let's be real, they get in each other's faces. They just do. That's how they learn and when they're together, versus, say, a sixth grade classroom when they're really just not interacting in that way. So I think it's a good approach.
And I realize that I will be accused of being inconsistent, right? Because there will be a time where we don't do the 5-day and another time that we will. I'm willing to assume, that accusation of being inconsistent, knowing that we're really putting the time and effort into making that determination. And if the board is uncomfortable with that, I would suggest give me a number, and I will use the number in addition to continuing to do some of those other measures as well, if that's a holdup.
I do have a question about the other motion that we may or may not make, or it's under consideration. Is just to reiterate that the beginning of the school year, we got advisement from DHHS that it was all or none, right? You couldn't do any targeted anything, correct?
Yep.
And now, through just different lawsuits that have been out there and just different considerations, we are now able to say, okay, if we have a cluster at Central School, we could, as a board, really target Central School only, in like your discussion before, Jesus, that it's fair or not fair, right? It's what does make sense, I think, is more for us for middle school in that case. So, any questions on that one from anybody? All right. So, I don't know. Looking for the board where any more discussions on this, considerations, any motions, anything that we want to discuss right now further?
No, I think the only thing I wonder is if the targeting of a classroom is going to start getting confusing, right? So if they're like, do I have a mask on today? Do I not have it? Like, is that going to be really confusing for the kids?
I would say that our staff and our students have done a phenomenal job of managing, this whole pandemic, that I think, there's some work on our part that's definitely going to need to be done, and there's reminders. We're reminding kids every day, it's not perfect. There are times where kids are supposed to be wearing masks, and Mrs. Denola has to pull a kid aside and, explain things. But I think we make it work. And I think for me, I need a few more tools, right? And I also, I think that there's an opportunity with this masking policy to be able to lean on the superintendent's judgment, to be able to make decisions in real time. Because when I saw the first case in first grade, it breaks my heart every time I talk to one of the principals and we hear about a case. And then I hear about a second in the same class. And here we are. We can't quarantine any of those kids, and we can't require them to wear masks. I feel a little bit like a sitting duck. Like, are we just waiting for the third case, and then the masks go on? And I would suggest that this tool will provide me a little bit of the opportunity to do what we as a team think might be in the best interest of the kids in that class, because of the activities. Like you said, a kindergarten class, those kids are always in each other's faces. You're going to have a lot of close contacts. You won't have as many in an 8th grade math class, right? And I think I need a little bit of discretion in making those determinations in regards to masking.
I'm comfortable making the motion for the 5-day. If you want to read it again, That would
Sure.
be great, because I can't remember the whole thing.
So the first one is
That one.
is the 5-day temporary, and that reads, the board grants the superintendent the authority to institute a 5-school-day temporary indoor face covering requirement for a classroom where a confirmed positive case has been identified.
That's my motion.
I'll second.
Board members want to discuss?
I don't have any more discussion.
Jay looks like he has a question.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
On one side of it, I'm thinking we've had 6 unfortunate cases, and I don't want to see any more. There's also, I don't know how many of you guys have heard about this. I'm sure you're aware of this. There are neighboring school districts that are on the verge of going remote not because kids are getting it, but because staff is getting it, and staff is running out and they're not covering for each other. They don't have the ability to cover for each other. And when we discussed this in depth last time, we all sat here and said that we don't want to go remote. It's the last thing. It goes against probably what I said at that point in time, but at this point in time, it seems like it makes sense to support this for me. I'm like a volleyball right now. I really am. I'm going back and forth. But the last thing, the 2 things I don't want to see, I guess 3, staff or students getting sick and getting ill, and us shutting down and us going remote. We can't do that. We talked a lot tonight about social emotional learning. We talked about the educational gap. We talked about a lot of different things that last year impacted and is impacting now. If we go back to that in any capacity, we're 10 steps further behind. I don't know. I don't have a question. It makes sense to me. I'm probably going to support it because of everything that you said with the variables and what have you. It's a lot. And I know that it's on all of us, but it's a lot to take in, and we're making a decision for an entire town. It's just a lot. So no question, but that's what's going. That's why my face looks the way it does.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that something David said when the board first approved the matrix was, we're going to revisit this at pretty much every meeting, and we're going to have these conversations, as difficult as times as they may be. And for me, bringing this to you is saying, like, we've tried it out for a month, and it works well, but it has its gaps. Here's what we've identified. And that's not to say that we're going to meet again in a few weeks, and we can come back with feedback about whether or not these changes were appropriate, made sense. Did they help in our mitigation strategies or not? And we can refine, adjust, and change as necessary. I assume we're going to be talking about face coverings for a long, unfortunately, for many meetings. So there's no decision made here tonight is irreversible.
Yeah, I think that's one thing for me is, unfortunately, we spend way too much energy and time talking about face coverings. There's so much greatness going on in schools that we've heard tonight that we haven't heard about yet. That's the unfortunate part about this, because take face coverings out of this, I think there's so much to celebrate in the school systems right now with the new leadership, new administration, a lot of refocusing on students for their emotional health, et cetera. I'll say for me, I'm more apt to not, only because I think we have done a great job in the school system when we look at other schools that have been mandatory and optional. You look at them both. There's schools that are mandatory that have clusters. There's schools that are optional that have clusters. So it seems like there's not it's really hard to target how to solve this. And for me, it's also, how are we going to live with this for the long term? Because this is an endemic at this point, in my opinion. It's not here. It's not going to be eradicated in the next month, 6 months, et cetera. This is going to be here for a long time. And I just wonder, how do we keep pushing that and then come back later on and say, oh, we're going to take it off now, but we're 3 months now, 6 months now. It's still going to be around us. So that's just where I'm at for this. So any more discussion?
Yeah, I mean, you had a good analogy there. You feel like a volleyball. That's kind of exactly where I'm at. I wonder if it's going to get like chaotic trying to do that, but I also trust the administration and your judgment, and if you're willing to take that on, I'm a little worried for you. But no, but I honestly, it's I trust your judgment at this point. So if you're willing to see how that works, I think that's, kind of tend to agree. But yeah, I've had some hesitations, but if, like you said, we can revamp that at any time. But I do worry about volleying back and forth too much, right? Because we need to be consistent and not, keep going back and forth and upsetting people with that. So
Yeah,
it's
I
something to
agree.
think
And that's
about.
how I felt sending the email this evening, after 2 days ago saying we've moved to universal. But, that action this evening was in accordance with our procedures, which clearly outlines if we don't have a cluster, we don't have universal masking. So that point is definitely not lost on me. And I think there are probably some people in the community that think that's what we're doing.
All right. We'll take a vote. So all in favor, raise your hand. All right. All opposed? All right. Passes 3-2. All right. Now on to the building specific. Any motion there? Any discussion around that?
I can make the motion again. Once they read it.
Okay.
Sorry, that's too long for me to remember.
Okay, so this is the board grants the superintendent the authority to institute a universal face covering mandate on an individual school basis when a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 cluster is identified. Again, our plan would call for pre-K through 8. It doesn't differentiate between the middle school and the elementary school. What this recommendation would do is give me the authority to delineate, using data that we have for each of the 2 schools.
Second.
Second. Discussion on this? Anybody? All right. We can go to a vote. All that approved, raise your hand. All right. Pass unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all I have under the superintendent's report. I don't know if folks have any questions or any other items they'd like me to touch on.
I actually have a quick question for you that got asked to me. So when you send out the COVID notifications, you note that they will be electrostatically cleaning the rooms. So are they only doing this now when there's a positive case, or are they doing this all the
So they do it all the time. So what has happened is I will text Jeff Mackey, and again, every case is different. It depends on the timing of the case. If we find out about a case, from a few days ago, like the case at the middle school, there's no need to do that. I'll text him. He will have his crew go in. Typically, they've already done the electrostatic sprayer in each room. They go back in and do it again.
Okay, so they do it daily, and then they do it again.
They do it daily, and then they'll go in again.
Okay.
Sorry, I do have a question I forgot
Yeah.
about. Something that was asked of me. Is there anything that, like tomorrow morning, right? First time we're going to be back at optional, right? Is there anything that's communicated through the 1MC, through email, through to each of the teachers to the students to let them know that it's optional? What's that look like? And
Yeah,
then-
so specific to the students, that would be something that would have to come from the teachers. We can put something in, the morning announcements. The message did go out to parents, so parents are aware. Staff also received a separate notification and that parent notification as well.
Okay.
So they are aware. That student piece is, we don't have an ability to communicate directly with students, so we have to count on parents and staff to do that.
Yeah, what was specifically asked of me was, in each classroom on their whiteboard or chalkboard, is there something that says mandatory mask optional? I said, I don't think there is. but there is communication, and just to reiterate what it is, so.
There is. And, as we said before, we tread delicately with that.
Right.
Because we have parents that don't want us to tell their children that masks are optional.
Okay.
And then we have parents that don't want us to tell children that they have to wear masks. So we have, try to maintain dignity by having individual conversations with kids when they're appropriate.
Thank you. All right. So that concludes superintendent's report. Other business, old business. I don't know, anybody has anything to bring up for that? Only thing I'd bring up real quick is if, for those that are interested in the budget working sessions, we did cancel the October 5th working session. We still will have a SAU level communication on the 12th at the board meeting, but then we'll have a special meeting on the 19th from 7 to 9 p.m. here at the middle school. I think that's at the library that we're going to have that, or it will be in here, I forget. But it'll be here at the middle school on October 19th from 7 to 9 p.m. And other than that, we will be going into non-public, RSA 91A3, Roman number 2. So I'll be looking for a motion from that. I am not sure if we're going to make any actions. I'm not going to say do them myself like last time. So I'm not going to say we will or we won't, but stay tuned. If we might come back out with an action. Right now I'm inclined to say no, but I don't want to say we're not. So I'll be looking for that motion from someone.
Sorry to the folks at home who just got a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to go into non-public.
All right.
I'll
Excuse me,
second
did we
that.
say what letter? I didn't hear that.
Sorry. I always forget that.
I just didn't know if I missed it or not.
Nope. Let me go under. Oh, I've got to get it. Sorry, Melissa, that was my fault.
That's okay.
It's legal, it's L.
Legal is L. Thank you. Hey, that's a good way to remember that.
Yeah, I know. It's the only one that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So you made the motion?
Yes.
Who was the second on that one?
I'll second.
Dave?
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. It's 9:12 p.m.